Okay, so we've got our matches happening, but at the moment we don't have any way to know which gems are matched. Basically, we know that we have all our gems in the board, and right now these purple ones here are marked as matched and these other ones aren't. But we don't have an easy way to know which gems are matched. We could obviously go through the whole array of each gem, and then we could maybe destroy each gem as we go. But that's very awkward. That's very time consuming, because then we have to, basically what we'd be doing is looping through, finding the matches, and then having to loop through again and deal with them. Instead, we're going to add them to a list that we can keep track of which gems have been marked as matched. So let's go back into our match finder script, and right at the top we're going to create a new variable. We're going to create a public list, and then in sharp brackets a list of gem that we're going to call current matches, and then we have to set this to be equal to a new list of gem, and then open and close bracket. So what is a list? So a list is very similar to an array. So if I just save this and go back into Unity, effectively from a visual standpoint, there's no real difference. So if I go to my match finder, we now have the current matches, and you can see I can set a value however we want. You can see it even, I never noticed this, the tooltip for this says array size. That's interesting. But we have a big long list of all these objects, and essentially it kind of handles in much the same way as an array does. But I'm going to put that back to 0. One really important thing that's different with a list versus an array is that a list is very easy to manipulate. A list is really easy to add something to it one by one. So with an array, if you have an array of say size 7 and you have 7 gems in your array, it's very hard to say, when the game is already running, to say, oh, I actually want to have this be 8 objects. With an array, you have to do a whole lot of things. You have to go and create a new array that's 8 long, and then copy everything out of the first array, and then add the one new thing in to the end of the array, and then make that new array that you made equal to the old array, or sorry, make the old array equal to the new array. It's a whole big process. But with a list, all you have to do is one line of code to say, hey, the list that I have, add the new thing. And that's it. And it's also similarly really easy to go, oh, I want to remove this object in the middle of the list. I want to remove that individual one. With an array, that's incredibly complicated, because you have to get all the objects before, put them in one array, get all the objects after, put them in another array, and then move them all over one by one into the new array, into a completely separate other new array. Very complicated stuff. With a list, all you do is say, hey, remove this object, and that's it. So that's why we use lists in certain places like this, when we know it's something that we want to make changes to. And we know we want to make changes to this because we want to add all the gems that we match up. We want to add them to this list. So let's go back in here, and in our find all matches here, we're going to say, every time that we find a match, so our current gem is matched and our left gem and our right gem here, we're going to say, we're going to add them to the current matches list. So current matches dot add. So we're going to add the, not current match, we're going to add the current gem. Then we're going to say current matches dot add left gem, and current matches dot add right gem. So we're going to add each of those to the list, and then same for above and below. So again, current matches add the current gem, and current matches dot add above, and current matches dot add below gem. Okay, so that's our gems, and we're adding them to the list. So let's see what happens when we do this. Now this is actually very quickly going to get out of control, because we're calling this update every loop. But let's just do a little play, and I'll pause it quite quickly. Okay, so we'll see very quickly we've got 126 elements in our array. So we are obviously getting every because this is happening every frame, we're getting our gems added to this array over and over and over again. So that's not really great. We don't want that to happen every single frame. So what we want to do is actually make sure that, hey, we've got all our gems here. You can see they're kind of just repeating. Now, we don't want to have that happen, obviously. So we don't want gems to just be added to the list over and over. And that's fine and dandy. That's just not something we want to have happen. But there's also a slightly separate edge case of this that we really don't want to have happen. Ignore that this is repeating over and over. Actually, we can do one special thing just to make sure that it isn't repeating over and over. We can just for now, temporarily, we're going to add at the top up here current matches dot clear. And actually, we might just leave this in because it'll be useful a little bit later also. So we're going to say current matches dot clear. So basically, at the start of every time, it's going to remove the matches it's already found and then add them back to the list. So let's go back in here, and now we'll have a much more consistent list, so I can just leave the game running here. Okay, so we've got one match at the moment, which is these ones here. So you can see you've got 1, 2, 0, 2 and 2, 2. Now let's do something. I'm going to move this guy over and this guy over. So now we've got two matches technically. We've got a horizontal one and a vertical one. That should be only 5 entries because these are the 5 objects here. But if we go back and look at our match finder, we know we now have 6, because as far as it's concerned, it's got 2 separate matches. It's got these 3 matching horizontally, so they get added, and then these 3 matching vertically, so they get added. But this one is the exact same, so it's appearing in the list in 2 places. So we don't want that. We only want one copy of an object to appear in this list because it's just redundant for it to appear in both places. And just to also be clear of what's happening and why this list is only being 6 long, remember that we're clearing the list every single frame. So every frame, it's instead of just adding the same ones over and over, it's emptying the list out. So although it looks to us like it's very consistent here, it's actually getting emptied and refilled every single frame. Which is useful for us, but it's not removing the duplicate ones that we have here. So what we're going to do is we'll go back into our script, and we're going to use something that's slightly external to Unity, but is a handy little thing that we can use. And what we're going to do is right at the top up here, where we have this generic stuff that's added in for Unity, we're going to, just below that, we're going to say using system dot link with a Q. And what that allows us to do is allows us to have access to some extra stuff that lists can do. So right after this whole for loop, so if we select the open bracket of this for loop, if we scroll down and follow this line, you can see it'll highlight the close of that bracket. So I'm going to go just below that close, and I'm going to say here, if our current matches dot count, so dot count is how we get how many objects are in a list. So if that count is greater than 0, so basically if there's any matches in our list at the moment, then we're going to say our current matches, so our current matches list should be equal to current matches dot distinct, and then an open and close bracket like that. So distinct is something that comes from system.link, and it's basically a way of saying, hey, from the list we have, pull out the it just generates another list that only holds unique objects. So anything that is a duplicate won't appear in this one. And then with that distinct, we just have to say dot to list, like so. And again, open and close brackets, and then our semicolon. So now we're basically saying, hey, get the current matches, convert it to be a distinct version so there's no duplicates, and then convert it back to a list that we can use in Unity. So if I save this and go back in here, and let's see if we can create some matches again. So if I play What have we got? Okay, so this has generated a match for us. So it's got a horizontal and a vertical match, and you can see over here we have our 5. So it's no longer duplicating this one, which is gem 5-6. So if we go over here, we've got gem 5-6, and it only appears once in our little list. So perfect, that works nicely. That's exactly what we wanted to do. And one handy benefit of that, using that distinct thing as well, is also, if we go up here, we can clear out the current matches, like so. And now when we go back in and save, or sorry, clear it out, I meant we can comment out the current matches.clear. So now every time it tries to add the same ones over and over, it won't do it anymore. So now we're just getting the unique individual gems that have been matched, and now we have a list of gems that have been matched, so we know we can actually do something with the gems that have been found.